Now, I will do the Skaven soon, I promise. I just didn't get round to doing them when they got their big preview showcase the other week. But hot on the heels of that, we have had the Nova Open this past week, and the Stormcast Eternals are dropping in with all of their thunderous glory with a load of new models. And I have to be honest, I've been wanting to start an order army for AOS for a long time. All my stuff is currently either Chaos or Death. So I do want an order army, and for the longest while I was leaning towards Seraphon, but these new kits that we've seen recently may have just swayed me over to the side of Sigmar, because they do look incredible. Starting things right off from the get-go, we are of course getting the release of a model we actually got shown a bit earlier, a few weeks or maybe even a few months ago, but it is still genuinely one of my favourite models in all of 40k or Age of Sigmar, and that is of course Toris the Redeemed, or his non-named version, which is the updated Knight Azeros. And this kit is just such a huge improvement over the old one. It is so much more epic and proportionate and well designed, and I love everything about it. I love how massive and imposing his wings look, and all of the new Stormcast stuff gives me a vibe of the angels from the Diablo series, and this is definitely one of the best kind of overall personifications of that look and that style. So I just think it's a really nice design that it actually looks like he's flying, and it fits in with the theme and narrative of his base, unlike a few other models we've seen recently from GW that just look really awkward and unnatural when they've tried to make it look like they're flying without having to use a flying stand. I think that this one actually does look quite natural, and it makes sense in terms of how they've designed the base, so it looks like he's flying. So I'm just a really big fan of it. I think this is a huge win model wise, and of course from the lore perspective, having Matt play Maggotkin of Nurgle means that I am sure I will get a lot of use out of Toris as he wreaks vengeance on his former masters. In terms of the actual new stuff that we got shown at the Nova Open, we did see a few equally awesome new kits, and starting off with another big dual character and generic hero option is Iridan the Witness, who, I will just throw it out there, is one of the most stunning models I think we've ever seen in terms of mounts. The design of Iridan themselves is pretty awesome. I really love that chainmail cloak and that hood, the massive axe and the brassiere on their back. But for me, this kit is all about that mount. They are riding what I believe is called a Morgriff, although I'm not sure if it's a named one or just a generic cool looking one. But I absolutely love this as a mount. It's one of my favourite mounts that I think we've ever seen in a game from Warhammer. It's got this really cool design that looks like it's a sort of bird of prey. It's got that hood over it that you see on sort of hawks and eagles and falcons as they're kind of doing shows and that kind of thing, which I think is a really nice callback to that. And I just love the pose of it as well. I love how it looks like it's just stepping down from that small rock outcrop, like it's ready to just pounce or swoop off towards an enemy and take them down. It's just so menacing, and it really does give you that vibe of being a real genuine bird of prey stalking its target. I love the whole model. And I also think the generic one, the Lord Vigilant, which is the generic version, is equally as good. The mount I don't think is quite as cool, although I will clarify, I think that might be because of the paint job, because I just love Iridan's black mount. But despite that, the Vigilant model itself with that massive spear pointing down ready to stab into the enemy is still really awesome and incredible, and I think having one of these as a big centerpiece hero for your Stormcast army does just look like it's going to be a brilliantly fun and a stunning way to add this big main unit to your Stormcast. Of course, a big mounted hero on a mount needs something to lead on a mount, and so next up we also see a return of another kit, one that I actually really used to adore and was planning on converting into some sort of Dark Angels Ravenwing mounted characters if I got to it, but I never got round to it. But it is the Palladors, and what we got shown at the Nova is the new Stormstrike Palladors. So they're slightly different to the older ones, which I believe were called Vanguard Palladors, but I think they're essentially going to be the same sort of thing. But the models, of course, have got that new updated streamlined look, and in my opinion, they are just infinitely better. The mounts are basically giant wingless horse eagle things called griff chargers, and as cavalry, as I said, I do think they look brilliant. They are really regal and majestic, but at the same time they do absolutely look like they could rip an enemy to shreds with those beaks and talons, and I imagine that their profile, their melee profile, is going to be quite scary indeed. But then even the updated, slightly slimmer, better proportioned Stormcast riders themselves, they are also a huge win for me. One thing I never really liked about the Vanguard Palladors was just how bad, in my opinion, the older chunky Stormcast looked on them. So with 3rd edition, when they started to make that move to the more slimline and proportioned Stormcast, I was really hoping and looking forward to these guys getting that treatment one day. And I mean, they do still look fairly hefty. They are definitely in some pretty heavy armor, but they do just look infinitely better than the older models to me. In terms of what they do, apparently they are held in reserve and then they just come in and strike for one huge battle-winning charge. So I imagine they're going to be pretty damn deadly when they make a charge into the enemy, and I just personally can't wait to do a heavy cav army with a load of these supported by things like a Lord Vigilant on a Griff Stalker like we saw in the Scaventide box, or maybe even on a Morgriff for a really bigger centerpiece unit to lead that army. The Nova Open reveals didn't stop there though, because we also got to see a plethora of new and updated foot heroes, and one that is making a very welcome return is the Lord Celestant. This one, I will be honest, I'm probably the most iffy on. Don't get me wrong, I do think it's miles better than the old chunky one. I just think he looks like he's been on maybe a bit too much of a cut and looks maybe a little bit too slight for a big main hero. It could just be the angles of the picture and it will look better in person, but compared to some of the other Stormcast heroes and new designs we've seen, he just looks, in my opinion, a tiny bit too lanky for what I would expect to have on like a big centerpiece hero. But I do love the pose, and I really love the fact that we've got some more options for them now in terms of the helmets, but also weapon options. We see a mace and a sword, a mace and a shield, or what looks to be a bigger two-handed Warhammer style option being shown in the reveals. So there are finally some more customization and options for the Stormcast, which I really like. And I do think, you know, whether you are completely sold on the model or not, they are still going to be a very good pick for a cheaper foot hero to lead your army, if that's the sort of vibe you're going for. But next up, we've got two kits that, as a Dark Angel player as well, I'm almost excited about these as a Dark Angel player as I am from an AOS perspective. The Lord-Relictor, which again was a big, old, chunky, early AOS model, has come back with what is, in my opinion, one of the biggest glow-ups in history. This guy now just looks mean. He is pure, unadulterated menace. From that stoic don't fuck with me pose to his banner, which is literally a skeleton in a coffin, to his just pure skull face helmet, he is absolutely someone you do not want to mess with, and I really do think he looks unbelievable. It's one of my favorite foot heroes now across all of the GW systems. So will I be getting one to play in my eventual Stormcast army? 100% yes. Will I also be getting one to convert into a chaplain for my Dark Angels? Also 100% yes. I'm one of those people that's always loved that chaplain vibe, like the skull helmet and the kind of bones and the darkness and the grimness. And this model just oozes that in spades. So I love this model. Out of all the reveals that we got at Nova, this one may be my favorite just because it is everything I look for in sort of like a Games Workshop game or system is encapsulated in that design. The Lord-Terminos is one of the new models that came in Scaventide, and whilst his Scaventide model is already super cool and awesome, I think I prefer this new one that we got shown. He just looks to me a little bit more action focused. Like he's actually, you know, standing on a rock, as he would be because he's a, you know, foot hero, but he's actually kind of leaning, pointing forward and directing his troops. And you may disagree and think that you prefer the old one. I'm perfectly happy for people to say that because, as I said, I do love both of them. I think they both look great. But this one, to me, just strikes me as a bit more dynamic, which I really like. But I do love the fact that we, again, seem to be getting a few new options. There is what looks to be some options for the helmet and also a few weapon options. And again, I think whilst I am definitely going to get one and he will be great in AOS, equally with a bit of conversion work, he could make an awesome Space Marine chapter master or a captain. So I will, again, most certainly be getting 2 of these to bring one in both 40k and AOS. I think my only kind of disappointment about this is that his person carrying the hourglass, which is called a memoriam, isn't a bit smaller, because if he was maybe half the size and he had a bit more robes over his hand, he could definitely pass as a perfect little Watcher in the Dark as well, which would just make him perfect for the Dark Angels. But as it is, I love the model. This and the Lord-Relictor, 2 fantastic models. I love both of them. And even if you've already got Scaventide, so you've got one of these already, I think he's definitely going to be worth picking up just because it's a cool model that looks like it's going to be really fun to kind of put together and paint. The Reclusians that we also first saw in Scaventide are also returning in force with a few brand new poses in a new box set, and what it looks to be a set of 3 of them and also 2 supporting memoriams. And it looks like they can either have weapon options now in the form of the axes and shields, or a new option, which is a big 2-handed mace. Now, their current rune-blessed weapons are 3 attacks that are 1 rend and 2 damage, and they have a 3-up save. So I'm kind of wondering what this other profile would be with the maces. Will it maybe be 3 damage? I don't imagine the save's going to drop, because pretty much all Stormcast stuff has a 3-up save, so it would be weird if they dropped to a 4-up despite losing the shields. But I think the maces may be 1 less attack and, maybe some more damage or something like that. But I do think that if that is the case, they could be a really good, flexible Chaos Chosen style unit to just throw into the fray and either be really quite tanky or just an absolute blender in melee. The final new thing we got shown is the Stormcast unique terrain piece, which is the Stormreach Portal. And I have to say, I also really love the design of this. It's got a bit of a Lumineth vibe to it. Like, it's very clean and nice and majestic and like just pretty. But I really like it. I think it's a very simple terrain piece, but it does look very cool. And I love the fact that it's just this giant portal in a building, essentially. I imagine rules-wise, it's going to have some impact on deep striking onto the board or teleporting across the board to get your units where you need them, based on the fact that it is a portal. But again, it's just so pretty and majestic. And of course, the paint job helps with this a lot, because it does look like very nice sort of clean marble that it's built out of. But I do think that just in general, it's going to be a really great addition to the army and to the battlefield to really showcase that nobility and majestic nature of the Stormcast. And that is the Stormcast models we got shown at Nova. As I said, I do love all of them, and they have very, very seriously swayed me away from the Seraphon, which is a shame because I also love the new Seraphon kits. But I am just such a big fan of all these new named heroes, the generic variants they come with, all of these new and updated and redesigned kits that are coming out, which in my opinion are just miles better than the old early editions of AOS forms where they were bigger and chunkier. So the Stormcast have really hit their stride now since 3rd edition, I think. And I pretty much like all of the new models that they've released since 3rd edition dropped. I did hate the squatting and the moving of a load of stuff to Legends, but if a lot of it, or at least some of it, is coming back in various forms with these new and updated and, in my opinion, better models, then for me anyway, that does lessen the blow. I get if you've got a big Stormcast army, it still might sting, but me as someone that doesn't have any Stormcast, I'm sort of in that really good place for getting into them, where they've had that chance to develop and grow them, and now they've got these really good designs and they've, as I said, hit their stride. So if you are thinking about getting into Stormcast as a new AOS army and you don't have any already, this does seem to be, I think, the really good stepping point to do it. But that's going to be it for today. As always, I'd love to know what you think and which of these reveals was your favorite from the Nova Open. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me. But until next time, I'll catch you later, guys.